When the Switch Lite first came out, I thought it was like the Nintendo 2DS, in that, oh, this is for the poor little kids who don't have their own spending money and are prone to breaking things. I remember when the 2DS came out, I was like, oh, they say there's an affordable 3DS coming out. Perhaps I may convince Mama to purchase this for me and I will be able to play 3DS games. And then I saw the 2DS. I was like, I don't want it. I don't want it, which is why I haven't had a 3DS until I am an adult and I purchased my own. So I thought the Switch Lite was the equivalent of that. I'm your cool Uncle Marissa, and you know, I kind of like the Switch Lite though. I had gotten my girlfriend a Switch Lite, which, not for the reasons I just said. I don't think she's gonna drop it and break it or anything like that. She's not a person who plays a lot of video games at all. So I was like, you know, this might be neat to be kind of like an entryway. Like if she likes it, then she can play on other stuff. And obviously we have, well, at this point we have two Switches. We have a Switch and a Switch OLED, so she can also use those. I promise. I got it for her with a satisfied gaming grip, which is what I was using on my Switch LCD at the time, and I highly recommend those grips for the Switch. The Steam Deck version, not so much. I do a review on this channel somewhere where we see that it is no bueno. But yes, I would find myself holding her Switch sometimes and just being like, you know, this feels really nice. Like, the size is perfect, the weight is wonderful. It has the feeling of a larger handheld, which maybe we don't really consider anymore, given that we do consider these things handheld. We consider the Switch handheld, we consider the Steam Deck handheld. And as I said before, you can indeed hold them in your hands, but I don't think that a handheld makes. But if we put aside the debate on what truly makes a handheld console or not, just in terms of the size and weight, the Switch Lite is something that actually feels really nice in your hands, especially with that satisfying gaming grip. And so I was starting to warm up to it. And I was like, you know what? I think I'll get my own, because you can find them generally for fairly cheap, sometimes with minimal damage, like a damaged screen or something like that. And you can revamp it and make it your own. And that, my friends, was made possible by ExtremeRate, who hopefully don't think I'm a big fat scammer. I have been a fan and customer of ExtremeRate for a really long time. I have gotten some of their buttons and stuff for my Game Boy Advance. That was, I think, my first encounter with them, because I was looking for this specific, like, muted pink color, and they were the only ones who had it. And it was lovely for the triggers and the sides is what I use it for. I reshelled my Joy-Cons on my Switch LCD, and I used their shells and buttons, and just fantastic. I love the soft touch as well, this sort of like matte feel. Oh, I've also done Switch Pro controller reshells with their stuff, and that was definitely one. I have the video on my channel as well when I did the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom themed controller, and initially I had like the glossy handles, but I was just like, no, the soft touch is just so superior. Sweaty hands or not, it's just incredible. I know some people don't like it, but I adore it. So I reached out to them and I was like, hey, you guys wanna help out with this project? Because I've seen they send stuff to like other members of the community, and I was like, I'd love to share this as well. And I ended up getting like a shell and buttons and stuff, and I also had heard about a Switch Lite OLED mod being made by a YouTuber, and I was like, oh, you know, it's just in time. So I'll get these and I'll do the OLED mod. Not to harp on that mod too much, spoiler alert, it's not gonna be happening in this video, but it just kept getting delayed more and more. And I was waiting for it, so I wasn't making the video, so like months were passing by. And then finally, like after a really long time, it only recently just came out, even though it was supposed to come out like I think in the middle of last year, or anyway, it came out and I saw footage of it and I was like, I do not like the colors. This does not look good to me. So I'm not gonna do it, but I'm still gonna reshell my Switch Lite, and I felt so bad because I could have just reshelled it. And so yeah, I hope ExtremeRate, folks at ExtremeRate, I hope you guys don't think I'm a scammer. I wasn't trying to just like take stuff I was waiting for a mod to come out that seemed like it was never gonna come out, and then it finally came out and I didn't like it. So what do we need and what did ExtremeRate send me? So ExtremeRate, I got a shell, I got buttons, and I got what I thought was a digitizer, but it's not. So ExtremeRate is very clever. So changing the digitizer, so changing the border color on the screen of your Switch Lite or your Switch or whatever, not fun, because it is adhered to the touch. So it's not really possible to separate like LCD panel, digitizer, which is what registers your touch and makes it a touch screen, and the lens. You can separate the lens from the LCD, but the digitizer comes with. So ExtremeRate's solution to that is selling screen protectors with colored borders. And at first I thought that was silly, even though I only realized this halfway through building the thing. But we'll see that once installed, it actually looks really good. So unless you need to replace your digitizer, I would just go ahead and use one of these screen protectors. The end result will surprise you. But other than that, you just need screwdrivers, which are a Phillips and a tri-wing, as usual, which ExtremeRate will include with your order. They always do. And you will need a spudger, most definitely a spudger, because there's a lot of finicky ribbon cables to open and lift. Even the shell itself, it's like clipped together, so you have to, that's all you need, and you need a lot of time. It does take quite a while to disassemble and reassemble, and you should also have some thermal paste because there's a little bit of thermal paste, and when you remove it, chances are it's not going to be in the hottest conditions, so we're going to clean it up and replace that. So I'll show you how to do that as well. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and make the Switch Lite cute.
Let's take a look at what we are working with. So this is the Switch Lite that I got. It shipped to me in a padded envelope, and so I'm amazed that it's in one piece, but it's kind of grody and it's got some scratches on the screen, which I don't know if you guys can really see, but trust me, bro. It also has that kind of gross sheen on some parts that you get after you play a console or use a controller while eating chips or something. Ugh. Now let's take a quick look at what ExtremeRate sent me. So in here we have the matcha green shell. It comes with screwdrivers. It even comes with colorful buttons in case that's what you prefer. And it has no logo, so you can put a sticker or something on the back or just keep it clean. These are the bits and bobs. There's also a screen protector. So this kit can be all you need to order for a complete reshell. And here is the screen protector. That is a lens if you want to change the color of your border to match. You can also buy these lenses separately if you want to add some flair to your current Switch Lite or if you want to do a mix and match. So I did actually get one in this really beautiful muted pink color just to see how that combo would look, and you do get 2 sets with each order. I also got this antique yellow one that I was considering for my girlfriend's yellow Switch. I also think this is a beautiful color. Just this entire range, these muted colors are so lovely. Finally, the buttons I chose are these sort of cherry blossom pink buttons, and these also come with screws. You've got screwdrivers as well. You are not at a loss in case you misplace a screw. These buttons are set up in that way where you have to clip them. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but it is what it is. Now the first step is to remove the back shell, and there are 4 screws on the back, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Once we've removed the back cover, we are presented with this metal shield, which we can take off. This metal shield has screws in the following locations. I highly recommend having the iFixit guide on hand. These screws have a bunch of different sizes, but they're not really color-coded or anything, and there's so many of them that it's good to have a little guide. Then you just gently lift that shield. It will give you some resistance because there is this, some sort of compound. Then you need to use a spudger to lift up that foam that's glued on. Remove the screws that are located in those 3 spots. And then you can lift that up as well, and that is where you have your thermal paste. We also want to make sure that we unplug the battery as well as the Wi-Fi. We can remove this ribbon cable. Again, these are spudger necessary. And this black and white antenna are the Wi-Fi cables. You don't need to remember which goes where because they are different distances. It's similar in a lot of DSs. We also want to remove this ribbon cable on the right. This tiny ribbon cable and these two tiny ribbon cables. You can remove the top button board if you like. I just left it on. If you're gonna leave it on like me, just be careful. We have a similar setup on the left-hand side. Going back up, we have this ribbon cable sticking out here. We've got so many of these little tiny guys. And these 4 screws and these 3 screws need to be removed in order to lift over the game slot, where you will find another 2 ribbon cables. You will then need to remove screws from the following locations in order to lift up this left side PCB. You may be able to tell that the center and the left are all one PCB, while the right Joy-Con area is its own PCB. Just a call out, I have also unscrewed the trigger buttons at this point, and you can do that as soon as you remove the back plate. Let me do a quick rewind here, because when you first open it up, this button board on the top is actually kind of in between the trigger and the battery encasement. So you want to hold it to the side with a spudger or something while you unscrew the trigger button so that you don't accidentally hurt the ribbon cable. Similarly, when you are taking your bumpers out, just be mindful of the tiny springs inside of them. Again, I'm so sorry my camera went out when I was recording this process, so I'm just trying to backtrack as much as I can to make these notes. Now, while we're lifting the PCB, you might get some tension from the speaker right there, so you can wiggle that about. Does not look like your traditional speaker. But if you are getting excess tension anywhere, there might be a ribbon cable that you missed, so don't go too hard on it and refer to something static like that iFixit guide in order to really make sure you've got everything down. Let's take our attention back to the right side where there are 5 screws, 2 of which are a little hidden, so we're going to take these 3 off first. Next, there is one right behind the little speaker. And our 5th screw is behind the ribbon cable that is between the speaker and the battery. From there, we just lift up the PCB, catch any membranes that might be stuck to the board, and put that to the side. And now we have yet another piece of shielding to remove. And we can simply lift that out. So you see the battery and everything is attached here, so we didn't need to take that off on its own. Just watch for that ribbon connector that is threaded through. Now we can get to the control sticks. I actually grabbed some K-Silver Hall Effect sticks. I was initially going to get the Ghillie Kit ones, but I heard the Ghillie Kit ones are a bit stiffer and don't feel quite like OEM as much as K-Silver does, so I went with K-Silver, and I haven't had any issues with them either on mine or my girlfriend's Switch so far. I will add a comment if anything weird comes up. All right, now we have these little fabric covers behind where the joysticks are. Gently remove them. You can use a spudger or tweezers to remove them. They do have a cut in the middle, so don't let that make you nervous about, oh no, did I do that? And put those to the side so you can reuse them on the new shell. Lifting out the buttons and membranes is very simple, and obviously you can reuse them. Just so I don't lose these bits and pieces, I'm going to transfer these little rounds to the new shell. There are these little bumps on the inside of the shell near the circle you can see, and these correlate with the holes in the little pieces of fabric. These aren't super sticky, they kind of just sit there. So just make sure they're latched onto those little nubs. And we're just gonna pop these in over the fabric circles and screw them in. I'm just gonna quickly test that they're even, they don't get stuck anywhere, they don't scratch up against the shell, and we're good, and we can install the other one. Now we're gonna get screwy with the back shell. So the shell obviously comes with all of these little bits and bobs, such as the game card cover, the micro SD cover, and I had heard before that a lot of aftermarket pieces, when it comes to these, are not as good as OEM. However, these all fell into place just like OEM for me, so kudos to ExtremeRate on that. ExtremeRate also includes new speaker grills. You can, of course, peel off the ones from your old light and stick them in the new shell, or you can use the ones that are included. In either case, you just expose the adhesive and stick it on. There is an indent, so it goes in quite easily. Now I'm going to install the micro SD cover and the game card cover because these screw in, so might as well do that now. I'm just gonna click them into place so that I make sure that they're screwed in correctly and nothing cracks. These black bars, by the way, kind of just go in one way, so you don't have to worry about mixing up the two or placing them upside down or anything. My next step is going to be to transfer everything into the new shell. So I need to start by installing my new digitizer. So this digitizer is from AliExpress. These digitizers do not come with any adhesive. And so I use my trusty cell phone repair tape. I use this on a lot of projects and it really helps. Just measure it out and get enough of it on each of the 4 sides. The reason I'm replacing my digitizer is because the Switch that I got was very scratched and beat up on the screen. And so unfortunately, you can't change the lens without changing the digitizer. I also ended up going with the same gray as the original because I wasn't sure how perfect the screen protectors from ExtremeRate with the colored borders are in covering every inch. So I was like, gray might be the least intrusive of the colors, but luckily the screen protectors are very wonderful and you can't see anything behind them where the borders are, and so any color will do. Putting the digitizer in is a little bit awkward because you have to get the ribbons inside and the rest of it outside, obviously. It's a bit of a fiddly little thing, which is why I really recommend not swapping out your digitizer unless it is all scratched up. And as you saw, make sure that the ribbons on the digitizer, the big ribbons, go on the right side. I also insist that you keep the screen protector film on the back on, because you are going to be touching it with your grubby little hands quite a bit to finagle it into place. And now we are going to retrieve the LCD screen from the original Switch Lite. For this, I am using a heat gun. You could also use a hairdryer on high, but it would probably take a while. And just heat the sides for a bit, and that should loosen the adhesive enough that you can pop it out. And of course, if it feels stuck, then give it another whirl. Just be careful that you don't damage the LCD in the process with heat or with hand. I'm going to use the spudger to lift the side of the lens. And I'm going to sort of drag it around in order to loosen it all around. And especially if you are planning to reuse this whole thing, just do watch out for where the ribbon cables are so you don't damage those either with your spudger or anything else. You can also supposedly reuse this adhesive, but fresh adhesive is always just easier to deal with. So I'm just going to peel this off so I can access everything else, since unfortunately I will be having to separate the LCD and the digitizer lens. Once again, I'm going to hit it with the hot air gun, and this one's going to be a little bit more challenging because I'm still going to use my spudger to get invasive. However, I don't want to scratch the LCD. I want to try to not even smudge the LCD. So let's see how this goes. You can always buy an aftermarket LCD, but I do hear that they can have variances in color temperature that the OEM ones do not have. So I am making an effort to just not go any further than just the very edges, because that's where it's glued on anyway. This is not laminated. Beautiful, my heart rate can go back to normal now. I'm gonna do the install in the bathroom as always. You turn on the hot water, you get it all steamy, you turn off the hot water, the steam allows all the dust and cat hair to settle to the ground, and you can get a dust-free install that way. Unfortunately, it means I can't ever get it on camera for you guys, but a last install note, make sure this thin ribbon cable goes on the right side. There is a notch in the shell for it as well, so it's easy to line up. See you in a second. Our screen is installed. I'm also keeping it in place with Kapton tape because centering this screen is kind of challenging. You just have to eyeball it and it has a lot of room to budge left and right, up and down. You probably won't get any huge gaps. However, I am one of those people who understands that the slightest asymmetry can drive you insane. Now I'm just going to snap apart these buttons and install them. I'm really glad that I have these nippers that are rather precise and are for model making because I can get a really precise trim on these. But as I said earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of this style of button delivery that's come into fashion with some companies. I think Funny Playing does it too with some of their buttons. The home button is a little bit of a DIY, and you put the opaque home button into the transparent casing. Make sure you put it in the correct orientation. Now we must reassemble our sandwich, starting with this metal plate. Don't forget to thread the ribbon cable through it and keep an eye on both sides for the ribbon cables from the screen and digitizer as well as from the joysticks so that they're not going to get crushed in the process. Next, we can screw this plate in. Now we will put the right PCB in. This time we are looking out for ribbon cables on the left and right side, as well as the bottom. And we can screw the PCB back in. You will notice that I did forget to pull out the ribbon cable on the right, but thankfully there's a lot of clearance, so you can just pull that out with a spudger. These ribbon cables also, they have these tabs that stick out and they're stiffer, and so you can use a spudger to push those tabs in just to make sure that you have it in all the way. It's not the most pleasant experience to put it all together, turn it on, and realize that a ribbon cable is not connected. Now for the big piece, which is the left side of the PCB. We've got a lot more places to check for ribbon cables now, basically everywhere. And we also want to make sure that the Wi-Fi antennas and the battery connector are all safe as well. I'm gonna start with that ribbon cable from the display that is behind the card slot, just because it's a tough one to reach and it has a very, very short clearance. Same thing on the left side joystick ribbon cable as with the right side. And then we can move to the bottom center. Here we can connect the battery, the ribbon cable on the bottom, and the Wi-Fi antenna. Then we go up next to the fan, where we have another ribbon cable that can also thankfully be pulled out quite easily if you forgot to pull it out earlier. This also has the nice tabs. And at this point, you can turn it on. At this point, I mainly just recommend making sure that the screen and everything looks good and all of your buttons work, as well as your touch screen. And make sure to completely power it off before you get back to work. By the way, your joysticks might need calibration. Very likely they need calibration. So if they were acting weird, as long as they weren't doing anything erratic like moving on their own or not moving at all, then you should be good. Now these are the middle parts that we took out of the shell, and they have the trigger buttons on them. The membrane just lifts out. Once those are finished, we'll put in the bumpers. Don't forget the springs on your bumpers. You can use the old ones or you can use the new ones. Then I remembered I need to screw in the rest of the PCB. Let's see if the bumpers actually make it. So the button board on the right hand side should be flat against the battery compartment, and our left trigger board can go against that. The trigger board on the left is much more straightforward, nothing behind or adjacent to it. Now let's deal with that thermal paste. So kind of doesn't look great. Switch Lite isn't gonna overheat like crazy, but it is always good practice to replace thermal paste. So first I'm going to use a dry Q-tip to take the chunks off and then remove them. And then I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol and clean the area until it is squeaky clean. Of course, do not get any of this thermal paste on your PCB or stuck between any components or anything like that, because that is gross. If you don't trust yourself or have shaky hands, you can put Kapton tape in the adjacent area so that it is protected. Next, we need to do the exact same cleanup on the other side. I wasn't able to get out the paste in the little indents with a Q-tip, so I'm going to use tweezers. I don't know how necessary this is, but I just want it to be pristine. And I found out after this that I am very low on thermal paste, so I actually was not able to change that red compound that's between the back shell. And I'm sure it's fine because they use such a cheap compound anyway, and they didn't even use thermal paste. I'm sure it's fine, but I know what to do if things get a little too warm or too loud. I guess I used most of the last of the thermal paste on my girlfriend's light. And I'm gonna screw that back because I would really like it to not move and cause a mess after this. You probably want to use a bit more paste than I did, but like I said, I was running out and had no clue. Thankfully, I still have the compound on the back shield, and then we can go ahead and install that. Now that our sandwich is all done, we just have the last bun to place on top. But first we need to fill in the buttonholes so that we have buttons. And this is literally the worst part. I feel very validated because even in the ExtremeRate instructional video, the person was struggling so much when it came to putting the shell back together. It's just the stuff sticking out both from the top and bottom. It makes it so you can't do like a nice swing type close, and also just and my buttons fell out. So I have to open them again to put the buttons back. Even using a plastic spudger on this shell, or even an OEM shell, several times can start to cause little dents. So this was absolutely the worst part of this mod. Finally, it's together, and did I turn it on purpose or not? Who knows? But let's go ahead and calibrate our sticks. By the way, the rainbow on my screen is because of the UV filter on my camera. Do not worry. You can see the scratches right here. It's such a bummer. User error, but also I hate clip-in design so much. Since the sticks are calibrated and everything looks great and functional, we can go ahead and now screw the shell back together. And you are all set once it's all screwed in.
Here we go. I would say that we succeeded and it is cute. It's like my signature colors if they were like mature. Oh no, the focus. It's like a matcha green and like a really muted pink. I do love these silicone covers I got from AliExpress of, I would say, legally distinct Psyduck and Slowpoke, but there's not much legally distinct about them. But they get cat hair stuck to them like crazy. We can see again also how the lens protector, the screen protector, you don't see the lens. It does a really great job of covering it. And so even just this alone, and it really brings everything together as well, because imagine having this green and then like a different colored border that clashes with it, especially if you have like maybe a blue one or a yellow one or something like that. Let's talk about this. So in terms of texture and quality of just the material and stuff, it's fantastic. I didn't expect any less from ExtremeRate as someone who's used their products on a variety of different use cases. I think that the screen protector / lens thing is super clever. I will continue to say this because it's just changing out the digitizer and like, especially if you're keeping the LCD, is such a pain. And I had to do it on this one because the original digitizer was all scratched up. But if yours isn't scratched up, there's no need to do it. And this is just such a clever remedy to it all. In terms of the ease of doing this, I wouldn't say it's difficult, but in terms of reshelling a console, it is difficult. It's not as difficult, in my opinion, as like the DS line, because those ribbon cables are not only incredibly tiny, but they are also aged. And because of that, a lot of the connectors and stuff can kind of crumble. But you definitely need to follow along something because it's not necessarily intuitive, but it's also just, it's such a bundle of fun, because when I look at the Switch Lite colors too, I'm like, dude, these suck. They're all so high saturation but not primary colors in a way that just rubs me the wrong way. I'm like, they're not innovative colors, they're not intriguing colors, but they're not basic colors either. I think the yellow is like the best one. I actually recently reshelled my girlfriend's Switch, which is Coral. I actually had gotten it for her during the pandemic when there was a Switch shortage because everyone wanted to play Animal Crossing. And so I could only find Coral available. And, you know, I guess she never really liked it because her favorite color is yellow, so who'd have thunk? So I reshelled that for her and I got her a new digitizer and everything, so it's all yellow and has the Hall effect sticks as well. I'm hoping that with the Switch 2, both in terms of the main console and any offshoots we might get, I hope that there can be some more joy and whimsy in the colors. But with the help of ExtremeRate, you can bring some joy and whimsy to your own. In terms of the quality of like the buttons and stuff, everything feels good. The only thing is the D-pad. And I don't know if this is an issue with the shell or with the button, but do you guys hear that? The down button rubs against the shell. Now, if you push it up with your hand, it's fine until it slips back down, which it's going to do because of the way you're playing it. I don't know if the shell just has too much material on it there, or if the button has too much material. I feel like it's not going to bother me personally very much, but it is something to look out for. Maybe test it before you put it together. I would be interested to know if anyone in the comments has reshelled their Switch Lite, if they've had this issue. Is this just a normal thing? Does the OEM Switch Lite have this issue too on rare occasions? Or did I just get unlucky? In terms of the process, while I do feel it was worth it because it was a lot of fun, and you can't tell me that this doesn't look better than like every other Switch Lite on the market, it was rough. So the fact that it's a clip-in, right, is just such a pain in the butt. And if you've ever opened and closed something that has clip-ins, you'll know there's only so many times you can do it before you start damaging the material. The iPod Video, the iPod 5, 5.5, and I imagine earlier ones, but that's the one that I have, are clip-ins. And I opened and closed mine a few times because I modded it, and then I put weights in it because, hot tip, when you SD card mod your iPod, it becomes like a fraction of the weight and it feels so weird. Someone suggested I stick some tire weights in it and now it feels like an iPod. But the edges started to get a little damaged. But same thing on this. I don't think it's something that's noticeable if you're not looking for it. It's very challenging to close because there's just, it's this thing that happens, right, where when you have ports on and buttons and stuff on both opposing sides, it's not so much like a boop, but like you kind of have to on both sides. So I was having some trouble with that. So because I had to undo and redo it more than once, I got these little dents. And it's not ideal. Like if I paid someone else to do this and it turned out like this, I'd be pissed. But I did it myself. So I'm like, that's life. It does not have anything to do with the ExtremeRate shell. I don't think it's any more malleable than a different shell because the shell I used on my girlfriend's was not ExtremeRate because it has the Switch logo and stuff and it's yellow, and ExtremeRate doesn't carry like a true yellow Switch Lite shell. The seller was saying that they're actually OEM shells and it feels like the OEM shell, but who knows? Either way, hers looks stellar too. I got the little dent issue on hers too. So, you know, she can sue me probably for that. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, if you are a fan of ExtremeRate or have become a fan of ExtremeRate from watching this video and haven't gotten a chance to test them out before, I have an affiliate code in the description that they have kindly provided, so you can use that to get a small discount off of your purchase. Otherwise, let me know in the comments, what do you think of this? And what would your dream Switch Lite or Switch or whatever look like in terms of color scheme, especially with the Switch 2 coming out and it being pretty much confirmed that it looks very similar to the Switch 1. What are some color options that you would get excited about with the Switch 2? Thank you so much for being here and for watching this video. Thank you so much to my Ko-fi supporters. You guys are the real MVPs. And if you liked this video and want to see more modding videos in the future, don't forget to like and subscribe. It doesn't get easier to say that, does it? As always, I have been your cool Uncle Marissa, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.